With the skin, or not the skin, rather, the facial hair, I like to paint under the line for most of that. So I'll go back down to one of these lower layers and switch to a really dark brown. Not quite black yet, because I do want to see my lines there, and just block in the beard. And then later on I'll drop in some highlights. But I want to turn on another couple layers now. Actually, let me turn that off, back up. Okay. Turn on some more layers. All right. Now this was a big one. I spent a lot of time on this layer here, you can tell, and that's where I'm starting to really get the definition of the nose and the eyes and the mouth together. So I'll kind of show how I got to this point by making a new layer. You'll notice I keep changing the opacity of my brush from that 30 to 10. I do that a lot, but that's just so I don't get too heavy. In some areas, like the eyes, I don't want the transition between the pupil and the iris to be too harsh, so I'll go in and blend it a little bit. And then when I want to do things like the highlight on the eye, get rid of this. You know, let me just do an eye. And do this like it's not here. All right. So turn down my opacity again. Grab some of this brown from the skin. Start working it. And when it comes time to do the highlight, I'll grab a hard white. Sometimes I don't even do that. I'll get maybe a gray and start to block that highlight in, and then push it up and just drop in the really hard white. I notice that with eyes and the mouth, if you can get those looking right, you really sell the piece. So I'll spend a lot of time on that. That's in the likeness. I usually spend most of my time just making sure that the nose and the eyes and the mouth are right, which I guess is the whole face, right? All right, so I'm going to bounce back up to this layer I had before. And when I look at this, I'm seeing that some of these whites are too hard, and some of these highlights are just, they're making his mouth look like a toy for some reason to me. So I went ahead and got rid of some of that stuff. I paint over it. You can see. And in the cheek too, like the highlight, just, I wasn't digging it too much. But in this layer, what I did was I grabbed the light area from the nose here, turned my opacity down really low, and just started going over everything. One great thing about this scratchboard tool is it gives you some irregular patterns when you lay it down, so it actually ends up looking like pores, and you know, if you back up far enough, it almost gives you that look like the model look that skin really has, which is why I love it so much. And then I'll switch to my blender when things are still looking too hard. I'll end up painting all those highlights back in again, but I just don't want to I don't want to smooth it out too much, you know. And up in the forehead, I'm noticing the same thing. Like it's too dark in some of these places. So I'm going to turn on some of these other layers here. All right. And on this one, you'll see once you start really dropping the real details, like the hairs on his cheek and some of these highlights in his beard, it starts to come together. And so I'll show you how I did that. Again, going back to that scratch board tool and turning my opacity up a little bit, usually around 30. Make it a little smaller here. I'll just start dropping in some of these hairs. Now, one thing I'm noticing is it's harder than I want. So under the preferences, I go to my brush tracking and set it up for how I feel like painting today here. Grab some of this light color. Oops. And on the usually spend a lot of time on the lip too, just because getting it to look real is I don't know, for me it takes a minute, but I usually go in and add some highlights and then paint over them. I just do it way too much, but by the time I'm done, I'm usually happy. A lot of times I will flip the canvas. That helps me see if I have any big mistakes as far as proportions go or shading. For some reason, if you look at something the same way too long, I can't, I get too close to it. I can't tell if I'm getting it right or not. Let's cut that on. That's what I just did. All right. So what I've done by the time I get to this point is just continue to go in, drop in some of these areas of interest on his face, the freckles, the shading over here, and I pulled that gray from the background, turned my opacity really really light, and just started kind of knocking that in. And I notice when I use colors from the background, it kind of pulls it all together so it doesn't feel like it's just cut and paste on there. Same thing with the hair. Went in and lightly got some of these areas that are right up against his scalp. And then banged in some of these highlights. And I think with the highlights of the hair and the face, less is more. So I'll end up looking at this. I'll probably stare at this all of next week and keep working on it, knock a lot of this stuff out until it feels right. Turn on another layer. So this is basically where I ended up is this point. And you can see I went in and got his earring and refined the eyes a little bit and the highlights, things like that. And I think I thought I started the hand. I guess I didn't.